You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not weak for feeling what you feel. No matter how dark, no matter how heavy, the ache in your soul is not a sign of failure. It is not dysfunction. It is not disease. It is the pulse of something deeper, something ancient, something sacred trying to wake you up. Modern culture will call it depression. The doctors will name it a chemical imbalance. The world will label it as something to fix. Carl Jung, the man who dared to face the soul when everyone else was dissecting the mind, said otherwise. In his red book, his private, exiled masterpiece, he wrote not of madness but of transformation, not of illness but of initiation. You are not depressed. You are being initiated. This pain you feel, this emptiness that haunts you like a ghost in the night, it is not the end. It is the invitation, call to the underworld of your own soul, a descent into the unconscious, not to suffer, but to remember. Remember what? That you are not your job, your name, not your past, not the roles you were forced to play just to survive. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you've reached the point where avoidance is no longer possible. The mask is cracking. The persona you built to protect yourself is falling apart. And underneath it, something ancient stirs. Something wild, something wounded, something divine. This is not depression. This is the death of illusion. And death, painful as it is the prerequisite for rebirth. You were told to be normal. You were taught to smile through the chaos, to work harder, to stay distracted, to chase pleasure and call it joy. Your soul is no longer buying it. It is starving. And depression, this dark night you're in, is not a malfunction. It's a message saying wake up. The world will sedate you, feed you dopamine, fill your calendar with obligations. But your soul, it won't be bribed. It doesn't care how productive you are. It doesn't care how many followers you have. It only cares if you're real, and being real begins with being broken. The caterpillar doesn't negotiate with the cocoon. It dissolves. It surrenders. It lets go of everything it thought it was. And in that darkness, a new being is born. Not through force, but through transformation. So what if your breakdown is your breakthrough? What if this ache is the exact thing that will crack open the walls you built around your heart? Jung entered his own hell and came back with visions that changed the world. He didn't run from the darkness. He befriended it. He didn't escape the shadows. He listened to them, and in them he found meaning. Now, it's your turn. The reason your old life feels unbearable is because your true self can no longer tolerate the lie. You are awakening, not in some mystical, cliché, age sense, but in the raw, brutal, sacred way Jung described, as a journey inward, into the chaos, into the abyss, to drown, but to remember that you can swim, because clarity is born in the void, purpose is born in the fire, and meaning is forged in the furnace of despair. You feel empty not because life is meaningless, but because you've been living someone else's meaning. You've been taught who to be by people who never discovered who they are. And now, your soul is demanding something real. This is not depression. This is your soul breaking the contract it never signed. You are being undone so that you can become. Let that sink in. The greatest pain always precedes the greatest clarity. And the most profound awakenings begin not in light, but in shadow. Jesus wandered the desert, sat beneath the Bodhi tree in silence. Jung descended into his own unconscious, facing visions that would terrify the average man. Not to go mad, to make meaning from madness. So where you are right now, in the void, in the confusion, in the dark, is exactly where the heroes start. Pain is not punishment. It's preparation. Your confusion is not a curse. It's the space where your new life will take root. You must stay with it. You must stop running. Stop distracting. Stop numbing the very thing that is trying to heal you. The wound is where the light enters. Yes, but only if you stop sealing the wound shut. This is not about becoming someone new. It's about unbecoming everything you were never meant to be. That's why it hurts. That's why it feels like dying. Because in a way, it is. Death is not the end in the soul's story. It is the beginning. And right now, as the fog surrounds you, as the world misunderstands you, as you question your worth, your path, your identity, there is something more true being born in the silence. A deeper voice, a truer vision, a purpose forged not in applause, but in solitude. So breathe, slow down, feel what you've been avoiding, not to suffer, but to finally listen. There's a voice inside you older than fear, older than the systems that tried to define you. It is not loud, but it is relentless. It speaks in symbols, in longings you can't explain. Jung called it the self, the totality of who you are. Not just the ego, not just the wounds, the entire map of your soul's becoming. And the self is calling. It doesn't care if the world approves. It doesn't care if it fits into your 5-year plan. It wants wholeness, not perfection, and it will not stop until you remember why you came here in the first place. So if you're tired, let go. If you're lost, surrender. If you're confused, keep going. The path to awakening always passes through the terrain of the unknown. And the only way out is through. You must understand, the darkness is not your enemy. It is your crucible. You were not made to be numb. You were not born to conform. You were not called to simply survive. You were meant to become. But becoming requires fire. And fire, though it burns, is sacred. This is the alchemy of the soul. The sacred process where who you thought you were is consumed, and what you truly are begins to emerge. Carl Jung knew this. He didn't fear the descent, he welcomed it. He saw the unconscious not as a pit of dysfunction, but as the very forge of divinity, the place where gods are buried and reborn within the human psyche. You are standing at that edge now, and the question is not, how do I go back to normal? But rather, what am I being asked to become? This pain, it has meaning. This restlessness, it has direction. But the answers you seek will not be found on the surface of your life. They are buried deep, under years of performance, pleasing, pretending. The key to unlocking them is not in controlling the storm. It's in allowing the storm to show you what needs to be washed away. You are not a malfunctioning machine. You are a myth in motion. You are the hero of your own psychic journey, walking the eternal path carved by every soul who ever dared to wake up. And that path, it leads not to comfort, but to truth. Not to ease, to integration. Not to applause, but to authenticity. So yes, your old ambitions may collapse. Your old dreams may decay. The friends who once understood you may no longer recognize the person you're becoming. Let it all fall, because what remains after the falling is what is real. There is a deeper intelligence guiding this process. Call it the self, call it the divine, call it life. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you trust it. You don't need to understand it. You only need to surrender to it, because what you are losing was never truly yours. And what you are gaining, no one can ever take away. Jung wrote that the modern man is in search not of pleasure, but of a soul. And that's what this is. Your search for your soul, not in theory, in books, but in the raw, unfiltered experience of being emptied, so that you can be filled with something real, something eternal, something true. This is the sacred wound. The ache that breaks your addiction to shallow living. The depression that shatters the illusion of control. The spiritual earthquake that levels the house of cards you built to avoid your truth. And when the dust settles, when you finally stop resisting, you will begin to see it, the beauty in the ruin, the wisdom in the rubble, the stillness beneath the noise, and you will understand you were never being punished. You were being purified. This is the Jungian death, rebirth archetype, written not in myth, in your very flesh. And you, brave soul, are walking it now. Don't turn back. You are closer than you've ever been. It is time to reclaim your inner authority, because this world has stolen enough from you. Your attention, your confidence, your instinct, your sacred sense of self. It taught you to obey before you could even think for yourself. It taught you to doubt your own intuition, to outsource your power, to seek permission just to be who you already are. And now that illusion is crumbling, you are no longer content with being told what to believe, how to feel, who to become. The soul does not ask for permission. It remembers its own truth. When you are aligned with that truth, not a copy, not a product, not a performance, you become dangerous to every lie that ever kept you small. Because a person aligned with their soul cannot be manipulated. They cannot be bought. They cannot be broken. This is why your transformation is terrifying, not just to you, but to the systems that profit from your confusion. Because once you wake up, you cannot go back to sleep. Once you see the game, you no longer play by their rules. You begin to ask dangerous questions. Why am I doing this? Who am I becoming? What am I tolerating that is killing me inside? And most of all, what am I called to create from this pain? Because make no mistake, you are a creator, not just of art or work or things, but of meaning. And meaning is the one thing no one can give you, and no one can take away. Jung said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. And that is the path you are on. Not self-improvement, not performance, perfection, but radical, whole soul level acceptance of who you are beneath the masks. Acceptance not as passivity, but as the birthplace of power, because only when you accept yourself, your shadows, your wounds, your madness, your light, can you finally integrate. And integration is the goal, balance, not happiness, but wholeness, to be who you are without needing to justify it, to stand in your truth, even if it trembles, to live from the inside out, not the outside in. That is the revolution. That is the awakening. And that is the message of the Red Book, whispered in the hidden pages Jung wrote not for applause, but for those brave enough to descend into the fire and rise transformed. You are one of those souls. You feel it. You've always felt it, that this life, this ordinary, numb, routine-driven life, was never meant for you. You were born for something deeper, something wider, something infinitely more alive. And now the soul is reclaiming the throne.